Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train a Dragon podcast. I'm your host, HC. With me are.
Rush 2112.
And Wolf.
And today we are talking about the question of questions, or at least the topic of topics. As you all know, How to Train a Dragon is an animated franchise. I'm
What?
pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
When?
I blew everyone's minds with that.
I don't know about you, but I was first introduced to the live adaptation, so
Yeah.
I think you're
Very
lying.
gritty. Very, very gritty. God, it was so gritty. One of the darkest films I've ever seen.
Yeah, where they try to make the dragons realistic, therefore their faces didn't emote.
Sounds
No,
like something
no, they
else
were
that
fine.
happened recently.
Dragons were perfectly fine. Big problem was just seeing Stoic's death and like live action. Jeez, Gerard Butler played that so well.
Yeah, I thought I almost wanted to call the police for them actually murdering him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, he played that part so well that even his house went on fire.
Huh. Literally blown to smithereens. There were little pieces of him everywhere. We're terrible. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. So
I
yeah.
wish I
Uh,
hadn't clicked the record button, just so we could restart.
no. We are keeping that in because it's funny. But so yeah,
Says the
I,
person
how,
with the poor sense of humor.
well, you're not better.
No, I'm
Hypocrite.
not. I know.
But so How to Train a Dragon is an animated franchise, and as we all know, when the internet started, the animation community kind of blew up because I'm seeing more fan communities for animated stuff than live action stuff. There are the live action communities. I'm not saying no, but but in terms of fandoms and stuff, I see it more with animation.
Yeah, because who
Therefore,
cares about real people? Real people suck.
among other things. So with
Cartoon
that
people,
said,
though, they cool.
yeah, cartoon people are cool most of the time. Just don't fantasize over them. That's unhealthy.
Phrasing.
I mean, why do you
But
think fandoms exist, HC?
to share your love for shows and movies,
You said the
not to
word love.
there
Why do you
are there are other ways to love something. Not anything has to end up in bed.
But it's the internet, HC.
So
That's always where it goes first. Afterwards, it's somewhere else. It could be anywhere else.
oh,
Rule
okay,
34.
First,
before okay, here's the thing. Rule 34 is just it's a rule among among an entire list of rules. Just because it exists doesn't mean it's the only thing.
Yeah, but we're saying where does it go? Well, that's probably where it goes.
at least first.
Yeah, actually,
Always
that's where it goes
first.
first. That's not where it goes last. You're right.
No, it starts there, and it always comes back to that point too.
Oh, I see
Eventually.
what you did there. Ah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Wait,
You
have
did
we
the
even
fun
gotten
for
to the
me.
first damn part of our script yet?
No, we haven't.
No,
Hmm.
no, that's
You're
our
welcome.
shtick.
Yeah.
I didn't even say what we were going to talk about, but anyway.
4
How to Train a
minutes of
Dragon.
bullshit.
Yeah, but anyway, How to Train a Dragon, animated franchise. The animation community is one of the biggest on the internet. Therefore, we are going to ask we are going to discuss How to Train a Dragon status in the animation community. So, how popular would you say the franchise is within this huge community on the internet?
I did absolutely no research to this, but I would
How to
assume
Train Your Dragon? What? Go ahead.
the anime I did no research on the animation like community and how they viewed it, but my guess is that it was maybe not with the first one, but after the second one it started, I guess, getting noticed by the animation community.
Hmm.
Okay, Wolf, what is your take?
So, I'm gonna go completely off gut feeling and just say whatever, and maybe I'll make people mad, maybe I won't. I'm gonna say it's actually, I don't know about the animation community itself, but in terms of looking at it from what Disney and Pixar did after the first film came out, I think it at least struck something, right? Like it did something
Influenced.
within, yeah, it influenced in some way, shape, or form, because after the first movie came out, we had Tangled, we had Brave, we had Frozen, and all three of those movies very similar and strike some similar chords to what How to Train Your Dragon did as well, right?
So how about
I
this?
would argue more. I would argue more Brave and Frozen because Tangled came out like a few months after, so it
Yeah,
couldn't have
true,
influenced it that much.
true. But it does kind of hit along on the same vibe, right? So it definitely feels like the people who made Tangled were also kind of in that same mindset that the people who made DreamWorks were. But also, How to Train Your Dragon, I think, did something else too. It kind of set DreamWorks up as one, in a way, the industry leader for a bit, and two, it definitely set DreamWorks up as, hey, we're not just the people who made Shrek anymore.
Hmm.
We're the people who made How to Train Your Dragon, the movie that made you feel something, and Kung Fu Panda, the movie that also made you feel something with Jack Black of all people.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But
Well,
it definitely took How to Train Your Dragon, I think, to get that opening first for them. But yeah, I would definitely say How to Train Your Dragon will be looked back, maybe not in the here and now, but later on in the future. I think you'll have people who study animation and things like that. They'll look back at How to Train Your Dragon and the history of animation and see that there was a blip in time where something happened there, and How to Train Your Dragon might have been the catalyst for that in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So a whole big bunch of maybe is
Well,
what
so
I'm saying.
I want to say that for the second movie for sure, there was a big part of not necessarily the marketing, but well, actually not for the movie, but for actually Intel, how them providing like the CPUs and stuff for the animation, I guess setups that the people had, they were they were like promoting this like, hey, you know, this they're using this in our movie for How to Train Your Dragon, and or for the second movie, and it really showed, I guess, in the second movie. Like I said, the first movie was really good, in terms and still in animation and all that stuff, but like it's like something else happened between then, which that's just the nature of technology. If we're all being honest here, how it always changes. Um, but with all the new tech and stuff, it just they decide to actually use it to their advantage and talk about it for once, and then they had everything. They had, you know, all the hardware. Well, not all of the hardware new stuff, but it was like they had they had people talking about it.
mhm. Okay. I'm going to maybe be the downer out of the three and say that it's not as popular as it could or should be. What I mean by that. Um, so there's there. I think the general consensus regarding the entire trilogy is that it's one of the few animated trilogies that all the movies are great. That seems to be the general consensus of the public.
Yeah, sure.
Toy
With
Story.
with well, Toy Story is no longer a trilogy, and
Oh,
I'll
use
get
it.
to that part later. Now, with that said, when you really look at this though, how many times do people really bring up How to Train a Dragon as an example for something? It does happen, but it's not something that people are like mentioning. Like when you say name me an animated movie, like if you ask someone random in the street, name me an animated movie, no one is really going to say How to Train a Dragon as their first option. And also, whenever you see a video on the internet, like for example, I think the movies are also kind of coming out in the worst possible times they can come out. Like when the first movie came out in 2010, what else? What else came in 2010? Want to take a guess?
2010 was that Toy Story 3?
I'm old. I don't remember.
Toy Story 3,
It
exactly.
was okay.
So,
Wow,
yeah.
you got that right. I'm impressed.
Wow. Ouch. Thanks, Wolf.
No, that's a compliment. I would never have
So,
gotten that right.
but anyway, Rush is correct. The same year How to Train Your Dragon came out, a few months later, Toy Story 3 came out. So, what are people going to talk about more? The new franchise or the old franchise coming back after years and giving an emotional conclusion?
None. They're
Which
gonna
is
talk
kind of
about
which
whatever
is
Disney makes. It doesn't matter if it's Toy Story or anything.
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. Now, 2014, How to Train Your Dragon 2 comes out. It's great. It does something that hasn't been done in animation so much, which is aging up the cast, aging up the story. It the movie is referred to as the animated Empire Strikes Back. That says something. And then a few months later, what else comes out? Big Hero 6, which we talked about this before, for all intents and purposes, has a lot of similarities to How to Train Your Dragon. What and when that movie came out, what did people mention that it's similar? That people mentioned that there are similarities to another movie which came out that exact same year? People just kind of ignored it. Hell, there are some people who actually said, "Do people even remember How to Train a Dragon compared to Big Hero 6?" And it's like, what happens here? And now in 2019, we have The Hidden World, which gives you one of the best conclusions you can ask for a franchise like this. And again, people just kind of dusted under the rug because Toy Story 4 is now a thing. And I'll be honest with you, Toy Story 4, in my honest opinion, is like The Hidden World, but worse. But nobody care. But nobody cares. People are just going to talk about how great Toy Story 4 is, even though honestly, it's not that amazing. It's not
I
a
think
bad movie.
I think all this
I,
comes back to the yeah, in the here and now, people aren't going to talk about it, but I do think when you get into the future and you have people who study animation, I think the first movie at the very least will be one that is looked upon and is remembered again because I do think it set a trend for a bit. And it again, I think it also changed things for DreamWorks in a way somewhat too. Granted, it's not heralded as a big thing. Like there's other stuff out there that's heralded as, like a major thing that really sets something up for a company or, an animated group or something like that, right? Like as an example, I think in video games, Platinum Games is, on the map now because of Nier Automata, right? And Nier Automata is heralded as this amazing thing and this huge thing that saved that company. That's not the case for DreamWorks with How to Train Your Dragon. If it would have been, maybe it would have been way more, right? Maybe it would be talked about way more because it saved DreamWorks. It didn't do that. DreamWorks was still mostly fine.
yeah,
But
but
I do think, right, again, my point is in the future, I think it'll looked back upon somewhat more favorably and remembered more for setting a trend within animation for a time.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Although when you say a trend, though, how much, how much did it really create a trend, though? Because what necessarily in How to Train a Dragon carried on to other films? Yeah, there are. You mentioned Brave, which is similar, but then again, Scottish Vikings. It does kind of connect
Well, yeah,
when you
that
do.
one's easy. But I think one of
Yeah,
the things that it, set the trend for was a particular style of animation that I do think, when I watch Brave and when I watch How to Train Your Dragon, they don't
yeah.
just it's not just similar because oh they're both Scottish and Viking and all that. No, it's like it feels similar in a way,
Mhm.
personally.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Story
But
wise, character wise, animation wise, like even though it's Pixar and DreamWorks, it still feels similar. And it's kind of the same for Frozen too. It feels
uh,
similar.
I'll argue
You might
Frozen.
disagree.
So, one thing that I want to get out there before I forget about it mostly, because I've been listening to you two go at it, is that one
Yeah.
thing I
Okay.
want to say right out here, right now, is that Pixar is always about the characters and the singing and the motions. DreamWorks has almost always been about the scenery
Hmm.
in their animation process. Disney is it here or there. It's both really, but it's like almost the middle. But you have the spectrum of the
Yeah.
scenery animation versus the character animation. Pixar is mostly about like if you think of Frozen and you watch it, it won't be you won't get the spectacular like lighting and stuff for the scenery that you would have in How to Train Your Dragon. Let's think of
Yeah.
there are two specific scenes that I want to mention. One in How to Train Your Dragon and one in the second movie. The first one is the Cove. You have
Hmm.
a sweeping scene of the Cove, no sound, no music. Hiccups kind of his head is there, but the scenery is there. The second is in How to Train Your Dragon 2. Ironically enough, when Astrid and the other people are going back to Eric's ship to kidnap him, you have the wide shot of them just in the boat, and you hear the guy say, "Do we go back?" But in the background, you have icebergs that look legitimately real, and they are just giant shards of freaking ice, but they look real. Like that is like you barely see the ship. You're like, wow, those are some like real looking ice. It's like, oh, there's a ship moving, but then it's like they change the scene so quickly. And it's like if that
Yeah,
scene
but
that has that short of a lifespan to me, that just tells me that DreamWorks is doing something with the scenery more so than the others.
yeah, but it's not just scenery. There's something about like this is I think more where DreamWorks are kind of like Pixar, like kind of what Wolf said that the character designs and in How to Train Your Dragon and Brave are kind of similar. That Disney's characters, even in the CGI realm, are have that feeling that they were drawn first
Right.
and
They all
then
do
made
look the
and
same.
then yeah, yeah, like you said, there are some characters that look the same. Anna looks like Rapunzel, who and both of them kind of look like two other characters in Big Hero 6. It's they kind of reuse the models in a sense, but uh, and what I had a point, but you can also when you see the sceneries though you can tell that the sceneries are a bit more colorful and maybe some stuff can look realistic, but at the same time there's something about it that you can tell. Oh, that's a drawing brought to 3D. No, but when you look at the scenery in How to Train a Dragon or a Pixar movie, you're like, wow, this looks real. This looks alive almost.
Mhm.
And but then again, how does it really connect to the question? Like how to Train a Dragon is viewed compared to the other anime? Because
I mean, how does any of it connect to the question?
hmm, yeah, no, because Rush brought it up, so I went with the discussion. But then again, I'm like because I mentioned to Pixar in terms of story and stuff, not necessarily the animation itself and why people are looking at it. Hmm.
It's fair, I suppose, right? Like, b- for me, it all comes back to I do think, right, it's going to be looked back upon more favorably when you get into the future. As a here
Hmm.
and now thing, I think it's going to be skipped over a bit more. And
Um,
maybe that could be down to, people just, again, people having their favorites, being more connected to those older films and Pixar and Disney, right? And it could also, and it's definitely down to, DreamWorks being really, really terrible at marketing
mhm.
100% of the time.
Yeah,
Terrible at marketing and
but
terrible at figuring out when they should and shouldn't release their movies.
well, but at the same time, one could also make the argument that Pixar doesn't have the best trailers, and yet here we are. A lot of their movies are
I
masterpieces.
would disagree. I mean, Cars 3 isn't that great, but that trailer for Cars 3 was great. The trailer, I
Okay.
would rather watch the trailer for
Well,
Cars 3 than the actual movie.
well, what I mean, like but
But
again,
yeah,
Cars 3, I think is an exception rather than the rule. But even though I haven't seen the movie, that's the only Pixar movie I haven't seen yet, by the way.
I've seen
But
parts, not all of it.
mhm. Yeah, but like when I think you mentioned Brave, though, I argue that the marketing for Brave is terrible because
I've not seen the market.
it sells you a completely different movie. And one would argue that the marketing advertises a better movie, but then again, that's kind of a problem. If the marketing sells you something, the movie is not going to give. It's not going to give you.
But
That's another thing. Uh,
eh,
how to Train a Dragon, for all intents and purposes, considering the trailers, it doesn't really sell you something that it's not. If you know what I mean.
I mean, I think the trailers for the first movie for I think
Okay,
they showed
first
you
one,
something.
the first one, I get it, even especially when
That's
I
what I thought.
admit, yeah, because but let's talk about this as a franchise for a second. When
Oh
you
yeah,
when you
sure.
see a trailer for Hunter x Dragon 2, it doesn't because maybe because it's more confident in the fact that, oh, the first one did
Mhm.
good, so so maybe there's a bit more, maybe we can actually show a bit more of what the movie has in store. Because yeah, the first one is still the first trailer for the trailer for the first Hunter x Dragon. Nope.
Yeah, I would agree. Like for the second and third film, they definitely did a lot better, and I think they did grow a lot more confident in how to show off their films and not be, hey, we're the comedy people, we do comedy. I think they've kind of gotten away from that now. They've realized we don't need to focus on that as
Hmm.
much anymore, especially in our marketing in order to get people in.
Yeah.
But I would argue though, right? Like, uh, I guess it's not really important, so there's not much point in arguing it. But yeah, I do think, right, that words escape me. I don't know. It's really hard to say, I suppose. Like, I think yeah, it's not as popular now, sure, but I do think, right, it's going to be one of those things that as people get older, as people look back,
Yeah.
you'll
It,
hear more about it. At least in
mhm.
certain groups and certain people, right? In certain groups of people in certain circles, you'll hear more about it in certain ways, maybe. Maybe I'm
Well,
wrong.
mhm. I don't know what to tell you about this because there's a good chance that you are right. That in like a few years from now, all of a sudden, people will look at this as one of the key examples to follow. But it is kind of weird though that if it is going to happen, we don't know. But if it is going to happen, then what prevented it from catching on more nowadays when it was a fresh thing?
Marketing and people's interest. People are
Maybe.
fickle.
Hmm. Because
And
some could tell you that for as good as the movies are, they're not necessarily doing anything new. That is they're pretty cliche. And it's like, okay, sure, but then again, a lot of movies are cliche these days. We are still looking fondly upon them.
I think one thing that, the first movie at least does, and again, it's something that I think I've praised plenty of times, and you'll hear plenty of other people praise, and for good reason too, right? Is, the forbidden friendship, the cove scene where it's, where it's almost completely silent with just the music, and that's it. Just those few
Yeah,
key notes.
yeah, I know. And then the first movie does throw a bit more of a curveball that, like, when people say the movies are cliched, yeah, but they're kind of doing something with the cliche. Like, Hiccup is essentially the wimpy guy that becomes the hero, but it comes at the cost of his leg. And
Yeah.
basically your main character in this animated franchise ends the movie being a bit disabled.
Hmm.
And also one of the Toothless, the other main character, is disabled throughout the entire movie.
Hmm.
So that's something. But and then in the second one, you have we mentioned this. You can we can make the argument the entire day: mind control, not mind control. But the way Stoic dies is kind of psychotic and fucked up when you think about it. You don't see this in like the leg thing. You don't see this in other anime movies, and I'll argue you don't even see this in a lot of live action stuff.
Hmm. I'd agree.
And and then the ending to three, which is the point that I'm pissed off about more, is that I'm not sure how do you mind if I'll spoil Toy Story 4 for a second?
Well, I mean, I don't mind, but hey, spoilers for those who've not seen
Yeah,
Toy
no, no,
Story
no,
4.
no, no. You specifically, Rush is not here at the moment. He went to fix something,
I mean, it's still though,
but
like, for those listening, if you don't want to be spoiled for Toy Story 4,
yeah,
tune out
yeah,
now.
yeah. Those who don't want any spawns for Toy Story 4, skip ahead a few minutes because I'm going to spoil the movie. So I'll
We'll
give
say
you,
something when spoilers are done.
yeah. So three, two, one. Still here? That probably means you've seen both. You obviously saw Hidden World and you've seen Toy Story 4,
Or you don't care.
or you don't care. So Hidden World and Toy Story 4 end in a similar way because the same thing pretty much happens. In Toy Story 4, in Toy Story you had Woody and Buzz as your main duo. In How to Train Your Dragon you have Hiccup and Toothless. What happens at the end of the Hidden World? Hiccup and Toothless part ways. What happens in the ending to Toy Story 4? Woody and Buzz part ways.
That's
And
not the ending I thought you were going to refer to, and I was going to ask, how does Woody have kids?
okay,
Never
no.
mind.
um, no, I'm talking about the main, the main thing, the main tearjerker
Uh huh.
point
Yeah,
of the movie is that is
I'm way
that
more interested in the other idea now. But
well,
anyways,
yeah. Yeah, but the reason I'm bringing this up though is that yeah, people kind of talked about How to Train Your Dragon 3 having a bittersweet conclusion and everything, but now Toy Story 4 does the exact same thing, and I assure you, people when the Oscars arrive, and I don't know what's going to be nominated, people are going to look at Toy Story 4 as the thing that like, oh wow, I can't believe they did this when How to Train Your Dragon did it before, and honestly, wholeheartedly, I'll admit, 10 times better. And it earned it a lot more. I don't know, maybe I'm just a fanboy, but I have my reasons to believe Hidden World did Descending a lot better. But I'm willing to bet you people are going to flail over Toy Story 4 that.
well, sure they would,
Uh,
because it's Toy Story 4, it's Pixar.
yeah, but it doesn't make it automatically 100% awesome.
I mean,
And
yeah,
I'm,
but again, it's Pixar. You do have to think like, yeah, we do live in a world where we do live in a world post Cars. Pixar has fucked up. Pixar has ruined it, right? They've dropped the ball. We live in that world now. There was a time where people thought that was never going to be the case, where that wasn't possible.
I thought it
Regardless
was.
of,
I
go
thought it
ahead.
wasn't going to be possible. When I'm saying this to you, the Toy Story 4 felt lackluster compared to Hidden World. I'm telling you this as a Pixar fanboy. I'm telling you this as someone who watched the original Toy Story trilogy like at least 10 times each.
Mhm.
Okay, I love those movies. I'm not saying this, that I'm going to jump the bomb. Oh, I never read Toy Story. No, 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 no. I love Toy Story. I love Pixar. I was one of those when people started to get. I even defended the first Cars to an extent, even though it's my least favorite of the Pixar movies. I'm still standing by Brave, even though the Oscar wasn't all that justified. But there are some parts when I'm sitting down and I'm saying, you know what? We know Pixar are human. We know not everything they make is perfect. I would even argue some of the movies that everyone loves the most are not that perfect as they make them out to be. But so why Toy Story 4? why this, which when this was announced, everyone was out to get this movie's blood. Everyone was so against. So
Is this a How to Train Your Dragon podcast or an
yeah,
HC Rants about Toy Story 4 podcast?
uh, because it does, but it does connect to the question. To the question we started with. What happened? Why How to Train a Dragon is forgotten, while a movie that was always planned to have that ending, a movie that built up to that ending uh, throughout a trilogy, and which did it in a unique way, in a sense. And then you have Toy Story 4, which is a cash grab for all intents and purposes. I don't care what Pixar tells me. It feels like one, and people are just bowing their heads up to that one and quickly forget How to Train a Dragon, even though it was the same year, months before.
It's worth pointing out here, like, we're also fans of How to Train Your Dragon as well, right? So there's definitely going to be some bias here, and
But
it
again,
definitely sounds like
I tell you
HC is
again though,
biased.
I'm telling you this as someone who adores Toy Story. I just gave you an example about how much I love Pixar.
Yes, you
So,
did, but you've also been
but
exceptionally harsh on that movie from day one when you first heard about it.
yeah,
To our
but here's the thing:
listeners,
I'm not the only one though. A
I
lot
know
of
you're not. I'm
people
not
will.
saying you're not, but I've not seen the movie, so I can't give an opinion on it clearly, right? I can't clearly state this is how I felt because I've literally not seen the movie, so I can't say anything on it. Other than like the trailer, I've not seen anything for Toy Story 4, so I can't say nothing on it. I can say, yeah, people are going to gravitate towards it because it is Toy Story 4. People are going to gravitate towards it because, one, it's still Pixar. Pixar still has a very special place in many, 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 many people's hearts for
Mhm.
good reason.
Yeah,
But
again, true, but again, it has a special place in my heart. But then again, I'm not going to bow down just because it has the name Toy Story in it.
I,
I legit I
as it
legit
stands,
think.
right? Oh, go ahead.
No, because okay, you know what? I'll just say this as one extra thing about this. When I see people talk about Toy Story 4, they usually and How to Train a Dragon World. Like when I see people talk about Hidden Worlds, they say, "Yeah, that's a great conclusion. That just became one of the best animated trilogies." Silently, maybe silently, but it left an impact, and we shouldn't ignore it. Then Toy Story 4 comes around, and it's like, "Oh yeah, it has problems, but you know what? It's Toy Story. It's okay. You're going to have fun." And it's like, so wait, if this is the kind of reaction this movie gets, and this is the kind of reaction this movie gets, why is the less one is the one that's lesser getting the most attention here?
Yeah,
And
but who said that though? A fan of How to Train Your Dragon, or a
I'm
fan, or
I'm
not a
talking
fan?
I'm telling you just random comments I saw specifically in my
Okay,
general area.
okay. Hey, you know what? I'll say it. I'll say it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the third movie just isn't worth talking about all that much, bar its ending.
That's an option. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah,
I'll concur,
the third
because we.
film, bar, yeah, again, it's in how it ends the trilogy is very good. I'll agree. I completely agree with that. I think it's a good film too, but maybe barring that, there's really not a lot there to talk about or that's worth talking about. That's worth diving into. Not when you compare it to, say, the first film, right? So maybe that's why.
Hmm. Well, something. You have a good point here, but again, if I sound like a broken record, I could say the same thing about this other movie,
Sure,
which.
absolutely. But at the same time, as it stands right now, there's more to talk about with it because it's the fourth movie. We thought it ended in a trilogy. The third movie ended so well that they brought it back. There's something worth talking about there, and the question of why did they do this? Was it worth doing? For How to Train Your Dragon, unless they decide to make a fourth movie later on that we find out about and bring Hiccup back and all that and decide to do something more with it, then yeah, there'll definitely be more there to talk about. But
Which, by the way, to answer your question, I will just as this as I am with Toy Story.
oh
But
sure,
don't take this as bias or anything. Trust me, I have limits. But okay, I think we kind of dodged the question, even though we did answer it, but we also dodged it a lot. So, but basically, and this was all the first category, by the way. How popular would you say the franchise is in the animation community? I say it has a name, people know it, people like it, but at the same time, not as much as I think it could and should be. It should be mentioned. That's what I think. I think it could be brought up a bit more considering its quality.
I don't know if it should. I think it could, but I don't know if it should. But I do think you'll definitely hear and see more people look back on it more fondly in the future.
Okay, Rush.
That's a great question. I just got back. Not really. What was the question? I'm sorry. I was trying to see how long I could not.
Okay, it's like let me see this. How popular would you say the franchise is in the animation community?
Isn't this the very first question still? I
Yeah,
helped my
we
neighbor
are-
move a freaking bookcase, and you guys are still on the first question?
We have a lot to say.
Oh, Lord. I thought I already
I mean, it
answered
was
that, though. I
mostly
thought I was
just-
the first one to answer
did.
that, saying
You
essentially,
did.
yeah.
It's
So
just been
just
so
to
long,
sum-
HC's forgotten because he sat here and rambled on and ranted on about Toy Story 4 for very
because it
very
connects. It connects. But you know what? Let's move on. In what ways do you think the Haunted and Dragon fandom differs from the other animated fandoms? I'm sure you guys were a part of some other animated fandom, like be it a movie or a show or something.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the... Nope. Okay, Wolf, no. Rush, I think you had I heard a from you, which is pretty typical for this podcast.
Right.
So, want to share your opinions?
Not really.
long. Great podcast.
Yeah. No. Okay. So, I am part of another. So the other one that I'm part of is the Miraculous Ladybug, and well, okay. If we're gonna stick to purely animation, because there's a lot of strong opinions in the Miraculous.
Yeah, we're talking animation.
I know. I'm just kidding. I mean, Wolf could say the same thing about the Ruby community that he's totally a part of. Yeah. But no. So the thing there is that people do note the animation quality for two reasons. One, because the very first season, the very first episode, they had like in its debut episode, they made it like the most well animated thing that they could, and all certain things happening, and it just hasn't been the same since. And it's usually always comparing to the other. But they actually have two animation studios that they use to produce episodes. And people will comment on it's like, oh, this is what Studio A produced, as opposed, or it's like, oh, I can see that Studio B produced this one. So they do actually notice it in terms of the TV show. Well, yeah, I guess it is a TV show technically, but they do note it, and it's not like, oh wow, the animation is absolutely amazing. They say, oh, the animation was good for this episode.
Okay. How does it yeah, how does it what am I trying to say?
I don't even know. Like, what the heck is you saying? In what ways do you think the How to Train Your Dragon fandom differs from other animated fandoms? The difference is that, I mean, unfortunately for this one that I'm in, it's a TV show, and I mean, I guess it would be the same if Wolf was talking about Ruby, where we would be listening to. Yeah, but no, we're not going to talk about that animation because everybody complained about it, despite the fact that it was a TV show. They were really it was way better than the first TV show.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so I guess it differs. I don't know. This is more of like their fandoms differ from the other animated fandoms.
Yeah,
It's
I'm like just to be
this
clear, we're
question
talking about the same thing.
sucks.
Yeah, I'm asking you though, as someone who is in both fandoms, what do you, and you know, you hang out with people, you talk to people, you hear people's opinions. What community would you say is more into it, or you know, more accepting, more not accepting, you know what I mean?
Oh God. I'd almost have to say, geez, that's really hard because there's certain things I can point out about both communities where they're not accepting, but I feel like and Miraculous is also a really bad one to use an example because I think everybody's numbed to the point of like, yeah, well, I expect that from this episode. It's more like they gave up, but like so.
Mhm.
Let me go to where I think our community may have failed. In the fact that some of them couldn't move on past the first film. It was their ideal
Mhm.
film. They couldn't get past Small Cup, and him growing up was the worst thing that ever happened to them. That's where I think like that's where some people that's kind of what loses it in the fandom for me. People just can't get past the first film. They want it. They want everything to be like that, and you can't do that really. Uh, I mean, you could, but it's really hard. Um, in the Miraculous fandom, it's like, well, this character did this thing. It's like, yeah, kind of get it, but no, I guess not. So, yeah. And then there's the other side. There's still some fandoms that are like, there's still parts of the Miraculous fandom where they have there's a, I mean, there's probably a tag for How to Train a Dragon, but it's ML Salt tag, where they're just complaining about how the characters are written and stuff. And I mean, I can see it too, but it's like, maybe I'm part of the fandom that's also become numb, and I'm like, whatever, I guess it is. So it seems like maybe the Miraculous is more accepting, but just because they're more nihilistic, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Hmm. Well, Wolf, do you have anything to say?
Hmm. About how to train your bleh, about how the
Bah.
yeah bleh, about how the how to train your words English I speak good about how the How to Train Your Dragon fandom differs from other animated fandoms. There, I got it.
Mm.
Eventually,
Woo.
is that what you want me to answer? Right.
Yes.
All right. I would say that it differs in some ways by the idea of. I think one of the big differences is, for me at least, anyways, How to Train Your Dragon, the fandom feels in a way smaller and more connected. And maybe that's just me being in the position I'm in of doing this podcast and getting to talk and speak with a lot of different people, but it does feel like people are more connected in a way. Like there's more, I feel like I know more of the people in this fandom than I do in other fandoms,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm on the.
Because I feel again, like I feel like yeah, there's these small communities here and there, but there's also these small communities overlap a lot. Like there's definitely like all the people from this one, you'll still see all the people, a lot of those same people in this place as well, and it just kind of overlaps everywhere. And again, like a lot of the names, like hey, I've seen that name before. I know who that person is. I've seen them speaking here or there. They're here as well. Cool. Oh, and they're
Mhm.
here as well. There's also another place that I'm at. Again, like it feels smaller. It feels more connected, and that does to me feel a bit different than other fandoms I've been in centered around animated shows, which granted aren't many, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But like those fandoms feel a lot bigger, and they feel,
Mhm.
or at least I feel like I'm less connected to some of the people there. Like I feel like some of the names are familiar, but very few of them compare. But it's very a small number compared to what feels familiar and what looks familiar and what stands out and all of that in the How to Train Your Dragon fan.
Mhm. Yeah, you know, you kind of took my answer. This is literally this is really I wanted to say. That's really accurate.
You're welcome.
Like yeah, like but I will say that I'm not going to say Rush does kind of have a point that in the Hunter and Dragon community there is kind of that small percentage that like the first movie is perfect and anything and everything that came afterwards is not. I don't agree with it, but at the same time, I've seen fandoms that are way more strict with this, or fandom that because even though if I'm not agreeing with someone on something Hunter x Dragon related, it never ended up in a fight. Okay, we could have discussed this, we could have talked about this, but I never actually fought someone. Or, but I've seen other animation communities, some that I'm a part of, some that I'm not a part of, that it could also just be a bit, how do I say it, psychotic, because there are some animation communities, if you say just one bad thing about the show, it's automatically you're automatically not the person we're talking to. Or if you like something in a bad thing, again, your opinion doesn't count, or you're not worth to be taken seriously and stuff. Hunter and Dragon was never this kind of community to me, and I'm not sure if it's the people or the fandoms, because honestly, I can tell maybe we're just lucky to fall under the quote unquote sane part of the fandom. I'm not sure, but I was never personally attacked because I had an opinion about something in this franchise, as opposed to other fandoms.
Time to find the fandom's dark side then and dive into it.
Not now. Maybe next week. You good
Here,
next
I'll
week?
insult you. Here, HC, I'll do you a favor. Your opinion sucks.
Thank you. I hate you too.
There, now you've been
Them's
insulted.
fighting words.
Now you've had your opinion. Now you've been attacked because of your opinion. You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyway, thanks for allowing me to experience that. Moving on. Let's see. Would you like the community to be a bit livelier than what it is now, or are you good with it being what it is?
I'd say it's fine the way it is. Like, yeah, I mean, it's always going to die down a lot now, especially since all three films have come out and people are going to be moving on now. So, like, the only way it's going to get livelier is if something new comes up or out.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it would, even if it did, right? Unless it's a new movie, it's not really going to attract that many people. It's not going to attract that much going forward. But I think, right, it would be a little bit nice. But overall, I think it's fine the way it is, right? I don't think it's going to hurt anything.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you'll definitely see some, people kind of go their own way and start doing other stuff, and some people will lose touch about it, and sure, but overall, I think as it is, it's fine, and as it is, I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah. I'd say I wouldn't necessarily want it to be like in terms of livelier, it is kind of. I'm not sure if livelier is the word I should have used there. Looking back, because
It is
the
lively.
people are still around. There's still talk about this. There are still people who communicate over this, but at the same time, I think if I want the community to be livelier, is just to maybe have more people.
I see what you meant. You meant you wanted more drama. All right, I got it. Drama.
No.
Haddock is the
We can give some
worst
fucking
analyzing
dra-
person in How to Train Your Dragon in the How to Train Your Dragon fandom ever. Do not listen
Wha-
to anything Haddock says. There.
One,
Drama.
No cap.
Calling
One-
Haddock out in the show.
no, two, no, three. You're fired.
Yes.
Come at me, Haddock. King of the
Yes.
Wilder West. You're terrible at analyzation. That's right.
That's
Heard
a
it here
word
first on the
now.
Berkcast. That's how we
You
make this fandom more livelier, more drama.
you are
It's been a while too. What's that other podcast that exists? God, I can't even remember the name of it. That's how bad it is. Oh yeah, Dragon
Wolf.
Dropouts.
Oh,
Wolf.
yikes.
No,
Here.
shut the hell up.
More
Moving
drama.
on.
More beef.
Moving on. Moving on. What?
Good thing Rush
Let's
isn't.
let's.
Good thing I
just
actually stopped
ask
recording.
What do you think is the best part about the How to Train Dragon community? And honestly, I'm afraid to hear the answer. I'm so afraid to hear the answer
I mean,
to that.
Obviously, the answer is the beef we just started here on the Berkcast.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. The worst part about this community.
Oh, great. Wolf lost it.
Is Wolf. And if you want to know
Aw,
why,
you're
you
the
just,
best at
you
being
just know the
something, Wolf.
reasons why.
Best at being the
Because of
worst.
the best part of the community, I met a lot of great friends here. So there's
I'd
that.
agree. I think one of my favorite things is getting to listen. Going back on the previous beef, I do enjoy listening to Haddock, reading Haddock's analyzation and stuff like that. And many other people's as well, right? Like In Honor to Glory is another one who I can name, who I loved reading what she had to say and everything about the
Yeah,
film.
she was on the show.
She absolutely was, and she has some amazing pieces that she's wrote up in the past about the show and the movies that are, excuse me, that are genuinely enjoyable to read through, and that goes for many, many people in this fandom. That some of them whose names I've unfortunately, I'm sorry, I've forgotten because it's been a while, and some of them they have went their own separate ways and they have lost touch and they've not kept up with a lot of stuff in the fandom and they've moved on to other things. But I still remember reading a lot of the stuff they wrote and enjoying a lot of it. And that's kind of what got me more and more involved in the fandom in general, right? Is reading those things and wanting to discuss. That's why I'm here doing this. I think that's been one of the best things for me, is just seeing how this fandom has catered to and involved some people who are genuinely really, really good, way better than myself at analyzation when it comes to story, characters, and many other things, and just being able to talk about all that in a very clear and concise and just enjoyable manner.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. You just, not counting all of the bullshit you said before. This is a good part. This is a good point. I agree. With that said, I think we pretty much summed up everything because Rush is not around again.
What do you mean? I've just been listening.
Rush, come back.
I've been here. It's
We
just
gotta
that
end
he
the
was
show.
talking about stuff. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear
We need
me?
to end the show because Wolf didn't back up record.
Wait, what the heck? Why did I get muted? I didn't do anything. I've been talking this whole time.
Did you really? You've been muted.
Dude, I have no idea why I was muted.
You muted yourself.
I assumed you muted yourself.
Whatever.
Did you not hear me say that you weren't here earlier?
I did, sort of. I may have been taking a drink of coffee at that point.
Wow.
Okay, look, I didn't have anything else to say. Like, most of it was just like slight comments on that. Honestly, the only stuff is at the end where Wolf, you guys are like, "Are you here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here." You like jerks. I'm fucking talking.
Definitely not here.
Oh my god.
Well,
Professional
that's
podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I think that was the twist. So that was the twist ending. M. Night Shyamalan directed this. But,
Is Rush ever here? That's the title of this episode.
Yeah. So that's also not the Berkcast. We hope you. What are your thoughts about How to Train Dragon in the animation community? Should it be more popular? Should it not be more popular? How do you see the How to Train Dragon community among other communities? Whatever your thoughts are, you can tell us all about that in the section below on our Tumblr, where we are known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and you can find all of us in the How to Train Dragon Valhalla Discord server. So until next time, I was
I was Rush.
Who may or may not have been here, and I've been Wolf.
And we will talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.